All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a Cold War spy movie. You know the kind I'm talking about, right? The ones with like shadowy figures and all like
All right.
it's super tense music playing in the background.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Robert Hansen. So this guy was an FBI agent, but get this, he was secretly working for the Russians for decades.
No way. Seriously.
Seriously.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and what's really captivating about this whole case is how
Yeah.
Hansen was living this total double life. Like,
Mhm.
on the one hand, he was this devout Catholic, family man, the whole nine yards. But on the other hand, he was this master spy, selling out his own country's secrets.
Yeah, there are so many layers to this story. I mean, it's not just like a simple case of espionage. You really have to dive into the human psychology to try and understand it.
Exactly. And lucky for us, we've got some great sources lined up to help us kind of unpack all of this. So we're going to be pulling from the American Scandal podcast. They did a fantastic episode on Hansen. And on top of that, we've got insights from a psychiatrist. And this psychiatrist actually evaluated Hansen after he was caught. So we're going deep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're talking dead drops, coded messages, and a whole lot more.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so one of the things that really gets me about this whole case is just how long Hansen was able to get away with it. I mean,
Oh.
this guy started spying for the Russians in 1979. Think about that. He managed to stay hidden for over 20 years.
Wow. So, like, he was operating throughout the entire Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, talk about major historical shifts. And this guy stayed under the radar the whole time.
The whole time. It's unbelievable. And here's another crazy detail. Get this. The FBI only found out about Hansen because of a tip from a former KGB agent.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah.
So their own enemy helped them catch their mole.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Right. I mean, how do you even process that?
I don't know.
It's wild.
So what did this KGB agent tell them? Like, how did they even know to look at Hansen in the first place?
Well, the former KGB agent actually provided a file on the mole, and this file had like handwritten letters in it, a recording of Hansen's voice, even a plastic garbage bag.
A garbage bag. What was that about?
So apparently the FBI had been using fingerprint analysis for a while at that point.
Okay,
But this case was what really solidified its importance.
I see.
Yeah, so they took the prints from the garbage bag and they matched them to Hansen.
Wow, so that was their confirmation.
That was it.
So picture this. You're the FBI. You finally found the guy who's been betraying your country for years.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been tempting to just go in and arrest him right then and there.
Oh, for sure.
But instead, they went down a different path, a much riskier one.
So what did they do?
They decided to play the long game. Instead of arresting Hansen right away, they put him under intense surveillance.
Okay. And what was the goal with that?
Well, they wanted to catch him red-handed, gather more evidence, and maybe even figure out just how much damage he had actually done.
So it was like a high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were literally spying on their own spy.
No kidding.
Yeah, they were tapping his phones, tracking his every move. They even bought a house across the street from him just to keep an eye on him.
Wow, 247 surveillance.
That's intense.
Oh, and it gets even more complicated. So they knew that they couldn't let Hansen suspect anything was up, right?
Right.
And they also knew that Hansen felt underappreciated
Mm.
and that he had kind of a big ego.
Yeah, you could say that again.
So they came up with this plan to create a fake job for him.
A fake job.
Yeah, at FBI headquarters.
Yeah.
It was basically a promotion designed to appeal to his ego and his need for like financial security.
So they were playing him.
Oh yeah, big time.
So what did this fake job entail? Well, they offered him a salary bump, brought him up to like $131,000, better retirement benefits. They even dropped the name of a high-ranking official, Neil Gallagher, just to make it all seem super legit.
Wow, and what did Hansen do?
He took the bait,
Hook, line, and sinker.
hook, line, and sinker.
So how does Hansen's psychology play into all of this? Like, why would he fall for something like that?
Well, you have to remember, this guy craved validation, and this fake promotion gave him exactly that. Plus, it offered him more financial stability. It was a gamble for the FBI, but it paid off big time.
So with Hansen back at headquarters, the FBI could really kick their operation into high gear,
Exactly.
and their efforts started to pay off right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what kind of things did they find?
Well, they stumbled upon a flash memory card in his office.
Yeah.
And guess what was on it?
I don't know what.
Copies of the letters he had written to his Russian handlers.
Wow, so they had proof.
I had proof.
And did they find anything else?
They even managed to intercept a dead drop that Hansen had set up
Like straight out of a spy movie.
Right. I mean, there's $50,000 in cash, coded instructions, all tucked away waiting for his Russian contacts.
But the FBI was one step ahead.
Oh, yeah. They took the contents and returned the drop, just to keep Hansen in the dark.
So they were closing in, but was there anything they were still missing?
Yeah, there was one crucial piece of the puzzle they needed. Hansen's Palm Pilot.
His Palm Pilot.
Yeah, they had a hunch he was using it to communicate with the Russians,
Okay.
but getting their hands on it without making him suspicious. Well, that was the real challenge.
What did they do?
They had to get creative. They came up with this really elaborate plan.
Oh, I bet.
So they sent another agent, Gene Ulrey, to lure Hansen away to the FBI gun range.
The gun range.
Yeah, for a shooting competition.
So they basically created a distraction.
Exactly, a little friendly rivalry.
Okay, and while Hansen was at the range.
Yeah, and another agent waiting in the wings, Eric O'Neill.
Eric O'Neill.
Yeah, and his mission was to infiltrate Hansen's office and copy the contents of that Palm Pilot.
Can you imagine the pressure?
I can't even imagine.
That's insane.
Talk about racing against the clock. O'Neill manages to copy everything. But just as he's about to slip out, Hansen almost catches him red-handed.
Oh, wow. Talk about a close call.
Right. Can you imagine the tension in that moment?
So O'Neill gets away with the intel, right?
He does.
And what did they find on the Palm Pilot?
It was a game changer.
Mm.
It had details about Hansen's next planned drop.
Oh, wow. So the FBI knew this was their chance.
This was their chance to finally nail him.
So how did they prepare for the arrest?
Well, they knew that Hansen could be armed and that he could be unpredictable.
Right.
So they chose a quiet spot, Foxstone Park. On a Sunday afternoon, February 18th, 2001.
I remember that day.
Hansen arrives at the park. He places a signal on a sign and hides a bag of classified documents under a bridge.
It's like something out of a movie.
We know, right?
So then what happens?
Then, bam, FBI agents come out of nowhere and swarm him.
Just like that.
Just like that.
They had it all planned out perfectly.
Oh, yeah. There was no chance of escape.
Wow. The arrest of Robert Hansen must have sent shockwaves through the entire nation.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you imagine the media frenzy that followed?
I can only
It
imagine.
must have been insane.
It was a huge embarrassment for the FBI.
Hmm.
I mean, how could one of their own, someone with such high-level access, betray them for so long?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. And what about the fallout from all of this? Lives were put at risk. Sensitive information was compromised. The trust within the FBI was shattered.
It's crazy to think about the damage this one man caused.
I know, and that's where we really need to dive deeper. We've set the scene, but there's still so much more to uncover.
Exactly, like what drove Hansen to do it in the first place? And what were the lasting consequences of his betrayal? Well, we're going to tackle all of that and much more in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we left off with Hansen's arrest, and it's pretty clear that this wasn't just some, open and shut case. The fallout from his espionage was massive, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We're not just talking about a few leaked documents here.
Hmm.
This guy compromised, I don't know how many operations,
Mm-hmm.
revealed the identities of American assets working undercover, handed over crucial intel about U.S. strategies and capabilities.
Mm.
The damage was extensive, to say the least.
It's actually kind of chilling when you think about the real-world impact of his actions. I mean, people's lives were literally on the line. National security was at risk.
Yeah.
And the trust within the FBI, the organization that's supposed to protect the country, it was shattered.
Yeah, and the Justice Department even set up this special commission to try to figure out the full extent of the damage.
And what did they conclude?
Well, they basically said that it was potentially the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history.
Wow.
Just try to wrap your head around that. Trying to piece together all the secrets he compromised over 2 decades.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is.
So after all of this went down, the FBI, they must have been scrambling, right? Trying to contain the situation,
Yep.
figure out how to prevent something like this from ever happening again.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They couldn't just sweep this under the rug.
Exactly.
And they didn't. The Hansen case forced the FBI to take a long, hard look at its vulnerabilities.
So what kind of changes did they implement?
Well, they put in place much stricter security protocols, emphasizing things like thorough background checks and making polygraph tests mandatory for all agents with access to sensitive information.
It's crazy to think that someone in Hansen's position, with access to all that classified material, wasn't subjected to regular polygraphs before.
Yeah, it was a major oversight for sure. But it was a wake-up call. They realized they had to rebuild trust, not just within the organization, but also with the American public.
Yeah, I bet. Because this whole thing really shook public confidence in the FBI.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the personal side of this story. Hansen's wife, Bonnie, she had no clue about any of this, right?
None at all. She was completely blindsided by his arrest and the whole revelation of his espionage.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like for her.
And on top of that, she also found out about other secrets he had been keeping from her, like infidelity. Apparently, he had a relationship with a stripper, and he even shared explicit photos and videos with a friend.
Wow, so it was like betrayal upon betrayal. I
Exactly.
mean, how do you even begin to cope with something like that?
Well, Bonnie was a devout Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and she really found solace in her faith.
That makes sense.
Yeah, she wrestled with her beliefs and her marriage vows, even considered getting an annulment.
Wow.
But ultimately, she decided to stay with Hansen. She visited him regularly in prison, offered him forgiveness and support.
It's really a testament to her strength
Mhm.
and her commitment to her faith.
It really is.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk more about Robert Hansen himself. Now, he agreed to cooperate with the government as part of his plea deal, but I'm curious, what was he like during those debriefings? Was he remorseful, defiant? What was his attitude?
Well, those who interacted with him during that time, they describe him as being surprisingly calm and collected. Some people believe he was genuinely remorseful for what he did, while others saw his cooperation as a calculated move to avoid the death penalty.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to know for sure what was going on in his mind.
It really is.
But one thing's for certain, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and that's where he spent the rest of his days.
At ADX Florence,
The ADX Florence,
Yes.
yeah, the Supermax
the
prison.
one that's known for its extreme isolation.
That's the one.
Wow. So Hansen went from moving in these circles of power and influence as an FBI agent to spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement.
Yeah, with very limited human contact.
It's such a stark contrast.
It really is.
And in a way, it's kind of a fitting punishment for someone who betrayed his country's trust so deeply.
I would agree with that.
But to really understand the Hansen case, I think we need to go beyond just the events themselves. We need to try to unravel the complexities that led him down this path.
Absolutely.
And that's where Eric O'Neill's perspective becomes really valuable. Right, because he was the one who was tasked with becoming Hansen's assistant, while secretly spying on him the whole time.
Yeah, it's like he was living a double life himself.
Exactly, pretending to be Hansen's friend while gathering evidence against him.
I keep thinking about what that must have been like psychologically.
It had to have taken a huge toll on him.
To be that close to someone you know is betraying your country, trying to gain their trust while knowing the truth about their actions.
It's like something out of a psychological thriller.
It really is.
And what's fascinating is that O'Neill describes Hansen as this deeply complex and contradictory person.
In what way?
Well, on the surface, Hansen was this devout family man, someone who seemed to embody these traditional values.
But beneath that facade, there was this darkness.
Right, a willingness to deceive on this unimaginable scale.
It really reminds us that appearances can be deceiving.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes the people we think we know best can surprise us in the worst ways. So did O'Neill ever talk about how he navigated those conflicting feelings? I mean, being drawn to Hansen while also knowing what he was capable of?
He talks about moments where he felt this odd sense of camaraderie with Hansen, even respect for his intelligence and cunning.
Almost like a sort of Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating psychological element of this whole story.
It is.
O'Neill had to compartmentalize, maintain this professional distance while working to gain Hansen's trust.
That couldn't have been easy.
Not at all.
And then there were those moments of intense fear, especially when he had to steal Hansen's Palm Pilot and copy all the data.
Oh yeah, if he had been caught, the whole operation could have been blown.
So in the next part of our deep dive, we're actually going to hear directly from Eric O'Neill himself.
Oh wow.
He's going to share his firsthand account of what it was like to work alongside Hansen, the challenges he faced, and those really nail-biting moments as the investigation reached its climax.
I can't wait to hear this.
We've been going deep into this wild story of espionage and betrayal, and now we get to hear from the guy who was right in the thick of it. Eric O'Neill, the FBI agent who went undercover as Robert Hansen's assistant.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I mean, you can read all the reports and files you want, but there's nothing like hearing it straight from the source.
Exactly. O'Neill's role was crucial in bringing Hansen down. He was living this double life, pretending to be Hansen's friend while secretly working to expose him.
It's like something out of a movie, but with incredibly high stakes.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I keep coming back to the psychological aspect of it all. To be so close to someone who's betraying your country, someone you're supposed to be building a rapport with, it's got to mess with your head.
For sure. Did O'Neill ever talk about the mental and emotional toll?
He did. He wrote a book called Gray Day, and in it, he describes Hansen as this incredibly complex and contradictory person.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, Hansen was this devout Catholic family man. Someone who seemed to embody traditional values.
Right, but we know that wasn't the whole story.
Not even close. Beneath that carefully crafted facade, there was a willingness to deceive and betray on a massive scale.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that appearances can be so deceiving.
They really can.
And sometimes the people we think we know best are the ones who can surprise us in the worst possible ways.
Absolutely. So what's really interesting is that O'Neill admits to feeling a strange mix of emotions towards Hansen.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, there were times when he felt a sense of camaraderie.
Camaraderie with Hansen.
Yeah, and even a kind of respect for his intelligence and cunning.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Almost like a twisted version of Stockholm Syndrome.
Right. It's fascinating.
It really is.
But obviously O'Neill knew what Hansen was doing, so he had to compartmentalize, maintain a professional distance while also working to gain Hansen's trust.
That takes serious mental strength.
No kidding. And then on top of all that, there were those moments of intense fear.
Oh, yeah, like when he had to steal Hansen's Palm Pilot.
Exactly. He knew if he got caught, the whole operation could have fallen apart.
Those must have been some nerve-wracking moments.
Talk about pressure. The weight of the entire investigation. Potentially national security resting on his ability to stay undetected.
It's incredible that he was able to pull it off.
It really is. So what happened to O'Neill after the Hansen case? Did he stay with the FBI?
He actually left in 2003.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's gone on to become this well-respected security consultant and author. He's used his experience to educate others about espionage and the importance of security in this world where information is so valuable.
That's great that he was able to take such an intense experience and turn it into a positive contribution.
It really is a testament to his resilience.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Robert Hansen case, what are the big takeaways here? What can we learn from this story about betrayal, espionage, and the human cost of deceit?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that espionage isn't just something from the Cold War. It's an ongoing threat. And it's constantly evolving in this world driven by information and technology.
So we can't let our guard down. We also have to remember the importance of strong counterintelligence measures, being vigilant, proactive, and constantly adapting to stay ahead of those who want to exploit our vulnerabilities.
Couldn't agree more.
And I think the Hansen case really drives home the importance of trust.
Oh, yeah, for
I
sure.
think it's a precious commodity, but it's something that has to be earned and reinforced. And even then, the Hansen case shows us that the people we think we know best can betray that trust in ways we never could have imagined.
It's a sobering thought.
It is, and I think it's crucial to remember the human cost of all of this. This isn't just about stolen secrets or political games. It's about real people's lives being shattered, families torn apart, the lasting scars of betrayal.
Yeah, we can't forget about that.
So we've explored a lot of different angles of this story, but I think the one question that keeps coming back to me is, what really drove Robert Hansen to betray his country? Was it greed, ideology, something even deeper?
It's hard to say for sure. Despite all the information we have, the human mind can still hold its secrets close.
That's true. Well, if you're interested in learning more about this case, we've got some great resources in our show notes, including Eric O'Neill's book, Gray Day. It's a fascinating read.
Definitely.
And we always love to hear from you. So what are your thoughts on the Robert Hansen case? What questions are still swirling around in your mind? Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
That's what it's all about.